They laughed under gold chandeliers as hot wine splashed across his navy coat, bright red on winter blue. Phones rose like a flock of hungry birds, filming the nobody they'd chosen to break. Across the room, a retired nurse froze in fear as a smiling VIP leaned in, whispering a threat that sounded like promise of violence. The man didn't shout. Ethan Cole simply lifted his eyes, calm in a room that wanted blood. Beside him, a black and tan German shepherd stepped forward, silent, watching, warning. Someone reached for the nurse's arm. The dog's gaze locked, and the hand hesitated. Only then did they realize the quiet man was a former Navy SEAL, and he was taking notes. Subscribe, comment, and share to see justice served. The stain on winter blue. Winter pressed its cold palm to Chicago, turning breath to smoke and sidewalks to glass. Ethan Cole parked 2 blocks from the hotel so he could feel the air before the noise. The wind coming off Lake Michigan had teeth. It slipped into the gap at his collar and found the old ache in his left knee, like it remembered him. He welcomed that pain. It kept him honest. He adjusted his navy winter coat, thigh length, and checked the red and black flannel beneath it. Faded jeans, brown leather boots that had seen too many mornings. His beard was trimmed close, a few gray threads catching the streetlight when he turned his head. People looked at him and tried to file him into something simple. Veteran. Working man. Nobody special. That was fine. At his left side, Rex moved like a shadow with a heartbeat. 5 years old, black and tan coat clean despite the slush, ears pricked, amber-brown eyes scanning. Rex didn't pull. He didn't bark. He read the world the way Ethan read a room. Smell first, then sound, then the tiny shifts in posture that told the truth before mouths did. The hotel rose ahead, all glass and bright warmth, like it didn't believe in weather. Through the revolving doors, a winter charity gala glittered behind security ropes and flower arrangements. Gold chandeliers, soft music, the kind of perfume that tried too hard to be remembered. Ethan stepped inside and let the heat hit his face. Rex shook once, neat and quiet, then went still again. A greeter's smile snapped into place as Ethan approached. The greeter was a woman around 30, slim, with sleek black hair in a tight bun and a navy blazer that matched the hotel's brand colors. Her eyes moved fast, not out of kindness but calculation. "Sir," she said, gaze dropping to Ethan's boots, then to Rex. "Animals aren't permitted." "He's trained," Ethan replied. His voice stayed low, even. Not a plea, a fact. The woman's smile tightened, as if it cost her. "We have donors here, important guests." Ethan didn't argue. He waited. Rex stared past her shoulder, watching security, watching the room beyond. His tail didn't move. His body said one thing: potential trouble, unknown. A man in a headset hurried over, a little out of breath. He was about 38, average height, soft around the middle, hair thinning at the crown and combed forward as if that could fix it. His suit looked expensive but didn't fit right, like he'd borrowed confidence along with the jacket. His badge read Owen Price. His eyes carried a nervous habit of flicking toward authority. "Is there a problem?" Owen asked, polite on top, panic underneath. "No problem," the greeter said quickly. "Just policy." Owen glanced at Rex and swallowed. We can make an exception if the dog remains calm." Rex didn't react, but Ethan felt the small shift in his dog's attention, like a dial turning. "He'll remain calm," Ethan said. Owen nodded too fast. "Fine, just stay to the side, okay?" to the side, where the room liked to keep things it didn't want in the picture. Ethan walked in without asking permission again. Rex stayed at his heel, close enough that Ethan could feel the dog's warmth through the coat. Music drifted through the ballroom like fog. Laughter rose in pockets, loud and bright, the way people laughed when they wanted to be seen enjoying themselves. Ethan took in the scene the way he used to take in buildings overseas. Exits, cameras, blind spots. People who stood like they owned the air. At the center, under the brightest light, Grant Holloway held court. Grant looked about 45, tall and polished, with a sharp jaw and perfectly styled dark hair that didn't move when he laughed. His tuxedo fit like armor, and his smile had a salesman's shine. He leaned toward a cluster of guests, and every nod he got seemed to feed him. Beside him, Vanessa Pierce floated like she'd been poured from a magazine. Vanessa looked in her mid-30s, slender, with long blonde hair set in soft waves and a gown that sparkled the same shade as the chandeliers. Her lipstick was a precise red. Her eyes were bright, but there was something cold behind them, like a blade kept under silk. She laughed with her hand to her mouth, theatrical, practiced. Ethan watched them for a beat. The pair didn't just enjoy attention. They needed it. At the far edge of the room, near a pillar and an unattended coat rack, Nora Bennett stood holding a paper cup of punch as if it might shatter. Nora looked around 62, short, with a sturdy frame built from years of lifting and helping. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple clip. She wore a sensible winter cardigan under a second-hand coat, and her face had the calm lines of someone who had spent a lifetime staying steady for other people. But her hands trembled. Ethan noticed the way guests angled their bodies away from her, as if distance could be a kind of purity. Nora tried to smile when someone glanced her way, then looked down quickly when they didn't return it. Rex's ears flicked. His gaze locked on a man by the bar who kept looking at Nora, then back to Grant, waiting for a signal. Ethan didn't move toward Nora yet. He didn't want to startle her. He stayed in the shadow of a tall ice sculpture and listened. Vanessa's voice carried. "We're so honored you're all here," she said, sweet as frosting. "Tonight is about compassion." Grant lifted his glass. "And progress," he added, a grin widening. "The future!" A server passed with a tray of wine. Grant's eyes slid away from the donors and landed on Ethan like Ethan had wandered in from the wrong movie. Grant leaned in toward Vanessa. He murmured something. Vanessa's laugh burst out, bright and cruel. Then she covered her mouth as if she'd been surprised by her own delight. Ethan didn't need to hear the words. He'd seen that look before. The look people wore when they believed they could do anything in public as long as they called it a joke. Grant started walking toward him. Rex's posture changed first, subtle and silent. His head lifted, his eyes narrowed. Not aggression, awareness. Grant stopped a few feet away, close enough that Ethan could smell expensive cologne layered over the faint scent of champagne. Grant's smile turned sideways. "Hey," Grant said, voice loud enough for nearby guests to notice. "You're in the VIP sightline." Ethan glanced behind him. Empty space. Nothing was blocked except Grant's ego. "I'll move," Ethan said, calm. Grant stepped closer anyway. In his hand was a glass of mulled wine, dark red, steaming slightly. Cameras were already angling in their direction, hungry for anything that looked like a moment. Grant's eyes flicked to Rex. "Cute dog," he said, like he was talking about a prop. "Try to keep it from biting anyone." Rex didn't blink. Ethan shifted one step to the side, His left knee complained, sharp and quick, then settled. Grant followed, pretending to stumble. It was too clean to be an accident. A shoulder dip, a wrist tilt. The glass turned, and hot red wine spilled across Ethan's navy coat, blooming like a bruise. A hush went up, then laughter. Phones rose. Someone gasped, delighted. Vanessa's voice cut through. "Oh no," she said, dripping sarcasm. "Someone get him a mop." Ethan looked down at the stains spreading over winter blue. He felt the heat, then the cold as it sank in. Rex stared at Grant, still silent, but the air around him tightened. Ethan lifted his eyes. Not angry, disappointed. Like he'd just watched someone fail an easy test. And that was when he saw it. Near the service corridor, a man in a gray suit stood half in shadow, his face turned away. He wasn't watching the show. He was watching the exits. When Ethan's gaze touched him, the man raised 2 fingers in a quick signal, then slipped into the dark hall behind the door. Ethan Cole looked at the red stain on his navy coat, then up just in time to see a man at the side door signal someone to disappear into the dark hallway. Rex tilted his head, ears rigid, like he had just heard a secret the laughing crowd was never meant to hear. The kindness in the corner. Ethan didn't wipe the stain right away. He let the hot wine cool into the navy wool like a confession that couldn't be taken back. Around him, laughter fizzed and popped. Phones hovered in the air. The room had the easy cruelty of people who believed consequences belonged to someone else. Rex stayed close, body still, eyes locked on Grant Holloway. Not a growl, not a bark, just a steady warning that made Grant's smile tighten at the edges. Ethan took one slow breath and turned his head, searching for the gray-suited man. Gone. Only the service corridor door remained, slightly ajar, as if the building itself had blinked. A young woman pushed through the knot of guests with a stack of napkins in her hands. She was about 27, average height, with straight dark hair pulled into a low ponytail that was starting to loosen. Her face had a tired softness, the kind that came from too many long shifts, but her eyes held a stubborn spark. She wore a black server's uniform with sleeves rolled to the forearms, and her name tag read Lila. "I'm so sorry," Lila whispered, already dabbing at Ethan's coat as if she could erase what the room had done. They like doing this." Ethan let her. Not because he cared about the coat, but because he cared about what kindness cost in a room like this. "Thank you," he said. Lila's hands paused. People didn't usually thank her. They either ignored her or snapped their fingers like she was furniture. Vanessa Pierce glided closer, her gown catching light like icicles. She looked 35, slim and polished, blonde hair spilling in waves, lipstick perfect, smile too bright. Her eyes flicked from Ethan to Rex and back. "Sweetie," Vanessa said to Lila, voice coated in sugar, "leave him. We don't need a scene." Lila's jaw tightened. "It's already a scene." Vanessa's smile didn't move, but something sharp flashed behind her eyes. "You're here to serve, not to correct guests." Ethan stepped half a pace forward. His left knee complained, and he ignored it. His tone stayed calm. "She's helping," Ethan said. Grant chuckled beside Vanessa like the sound belonged to him. "You hear that?" Grant said loudly, so the cameras would catch it. "Our mop has a spokesperson." A few people laughed again, softer this time, the laugh of followers who sensed the leader might be wrong but didn't know how to stop. Rex shifted one paw forward and went still, head slightly lowered, gaze unwavering. Grant saw it. The smugness in his face faltered. He took a quick step back without meaning to, then tried to recover with a louder grin. "Relax," Grant said. "It's a charity event, not a war zone." Ethan didn't answer that. His eyes moved instead, studying the nearby guests. Who was recording? Who was enjoying it? Who looked uneasy? Who looked afraid? Across the room, Nora Bennett stood near the pillar again, holding her paper cup with both hands like a life raft. She looked 62, short and sturdy, gray hair clipped back, cheeks flushed from humiliation more than warmth. Her eyes kept darting to Vanessa, then to the exit, then down to the floor. Ethan noticed something else, too. A tall man by the bar, early 40s, broad shoulders, close-cropped hair, suit jacket unbuttoned like he didn't care about rules. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't filming. He was watching Nora the way a hawk watched a field. And every few seconds, his gaze flicked toward Grant. Waiting. Ethan leaned slightly toward Lila. "What's your role tonight?" he asked quietly. "Event staff," she said, voice low. "Whatever they need. Mostly whatever they demand." "What about her?" Ethan nodded toward Nora without making it obvious. Lila followed his glance and her expression softened. "That's Nora Bennett, retired nurse. She's good. The kind of person who shows up when nobody else does." Lila swallowed. "They don't like her. She doesn't fit." "Why is she here?" Lila hesitated, then leaned closer. "She was invited because she saved someone's kid years ago. It made a great story for the program." Her eyes flicked to Vanessa. "But now they want the story without the person." Ethan held that in his chest like a weight. He'd seen versions of it everywhere. People loved heroism when it was tidy. They hated it when it stood in the room and reminded them of their own lack. Vanessa clapped her hands lightly, drawing attention. "Everyone," she said, bright, "Grant is about to make a very special announcement." Grant lifted his glass again, as if the wine in it could wash away what he'd just done. "Tonight," he boomed, "we celebrate a future where people like us, visionaries, bring care to the world." Ethan watched Nora flinch at the phrase, "people like us." Grant's eyes scanned the room and landed on Nora like she'd stepped into his spotlight. "Speaking of care," Grant said, smile widening, "we have a guest, a retired nurse. Isn't that sweet?" The way he said sweet made it feel like an insult. Vanessa drifted toward Nora and hooked an arm lightly around her elbow, guiding her as if she were helping. Nora's posture stiffened, her shoulders drew in, her eyes widened. "You should stand closer," Vanessa murmured, loud enough for Nora to hear, soft enough that the crowd wouldn't. "Smile. You'll look grateful." Nora tried. It came out wrong. Vanessa's fingers tightened on Nora's arm. "Come on," she whispered, the sweetness gone. "Don't embarrass me." The tall man by the bar began moving. Ethan moved first. He didn't charge, he didn't shout, he didn't make a hero show. He crossed the distance at a steady pace that looked casual to the crowd and urgent to anyone who understood momentum. Rex followed, silent, his nails barely clicking on the polished floor. As Ethan approached, he caught the scent of Nora's fear. Not perfume, not champagne. Something sharp and human, like cold metal. Vanessa saw Ethan and her eyes narrowed. "Sir, you're not part of this moment." Ethan stopped beside Nora, close enough that Nora could see his face without having to look up at Vanessa. He kept his voice low. "Ma'am," he said to Nora, Are you okay? Nora's lips parted. She didn't speak at first, as if she wasn't allowed to. Then her voice slipped out, thin but clear. No, she whispered. That single word changed the room, even if most people didn't notice. It was a pebble in ice, a crack that spread. Vanessa's hand tightened again, reflexive. She's fine, Vanessa said quickly, louder now for the cameras. She's just overwhelmed by the generosity. Ethan's eyes lifted to Vanessa. Brown, warm on most days. Sharp now. Let go of her, he said. Vanessa laughed like he'd told a joke. Excuse me? Ethan didn't repeat himself. He shifted his stance slightly, placing his body between Nora and Vanessa's grip without touching anyone yet. It was controlled, measured. A move designed to make the next step someone else's choice. Rex stepped forward by half a pace and stopped. Ears up, eyes steady. Silent warning. Vanessa's smile finally cracked. Her fingers loosened on Nora's arm, just a little. The tall man from the bar reached them and stopped short when he saw Rex. His eyes flicked down to the dog, then back to Ethan, assessing. He didn't like what he saw. Grant noticed the shift. He started walking over, voice already rising. What's going on? Grant demanded, playing concern for the room. Are you harassing my staff? Ethan didn't look at Grant yet. He kept his attention on Nora. You can step back, Ethan said softly to her. No one's going to drag you anywhere. Nora's breath trembled. She took one small step, then another, moving behind Ethan like she'd found shelter. Grant's face hardened. The cameras angled closer. Ethan finally turned to him. I'm not here to make trouble, Ethan said evenly. But I won't watch you make it. Grant's eyes narrowed. And who are you supposed to be? Ethan didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. Because from the edge of the ballroom, Owen Price appeared, pale, eyes wide, headset crooked. He looked like a man who'd just been handed a message he couldn't swallow. Mr. Holloway, Owen said, voice shaky. There's someone at the service entrance asking for you. They said it's urgent. Grant's confidence wavered for half a second. Vanessa's chin lifted, defensive. Ethan's gaze slid past them to the service corridor door. For the briefest moment, he thought he saw the gray-suited man again, just a slice of shoulder in shadow. Then it was gone. Rex tilted his head, ears rigid, as if listening to something beyond the music. And Ethan felt the cold truth settle in his chest. Whatever was moving through that hallway wasn't random. It was scheduled. The door that didn't belong. The music kept playing, but it no longer sounded like music. It sounded like cover. Ethan held his position with Nora behind him, Rex at his left, and Grant Holloway in front. He didn't shift his feet without purpose. The ballroom floor was slick where melted snow had been tracked in, and Ethan marked it the way he'd once marked loose gravel near a doorway. Hazards, angles, distances. Vanessa hovered a step to Grant's right, her smile rebooting like a frozen screen. Owen Price lingered near the edge of the group, headset crooked, hands twisting together like he wanted to disappear. Urgent, Grant repeated, annoyance hiding the first crack of worry. He glanced toward the service corridor door. Who is it? Owen swallowed. They wouldn't give a name, sir. They said you'd understand. Ethan watched Grant's eyes. A flicker. A tiny calculation. Grant wasn't confused. He was deciding. The tall man from the bar, broad shoulders, close-cropped hair, shifted closer too, positioning himself as if the space belonged to him. His gaze moved from Rex to Ethan to Nora. It wasn't curiosity. It was readiness. Ethan took one breath, slow and deep, and spoke without raising his voice. "Ma'am," he said to Nora, "stay behind me. Don't argue with anyone. Just breathe." Nora nodded, her hands tight around her paper cup. Her face looked pale under the chandeliers. She tried to straighten her shoulders and failed. Rex's attention wasn't on Grant anymore. It was on the service corridor door. His ears were forward, head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring. He wasn't reacting to the crowd. He was listening to something beyond it. Footsteps, maybe, or the absence of them. Ethan felt the same thing in his bones. The door was wrong. Not because it was a door, because it was a path, and someone had just used it like an escape route. Grant tried to reclaim the room. He turned half toward the guests, lifting his glass again like a shield. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice booming, "we're just having a minor misunderstanding. Nothing to worry about." Ethan noted the timing. The cameras had moved in. The laughter had thinned. The air was now waiting. Grant's next move would be for the audience. Vanessa leaned toward him, whispering fast, her lips barely moving. She looked calm, but her fingers were curled tight at her side. Ethan's eyes stayed on Grant's shoulders. He watched how Grant carried tension, where he stored his anger, how he shifted weight when he lied. "Security," Grant called out, louder now. "Can someone remove this man? He's disturbing a guest." Two security guards started forward from the far side of the room. Mid-30s, muscular, black suits, earpieces. Their faces were blank, trained for polite force. Ethan didn't panic. He measured. 2 guards, 10 steps away. Clear sightline. Slippery patch near the ice sculpture to the left. A cluster of donors to the right. Nora behind him. Rex beside him. He turned his head slightly, just enough for Rex to see his mouth. A small hand signal wasn't needed. Rex knew him. "Stay," Ethan murmured. Rex stayed, still as stone, eyes bright. The guards approached. "Sir," one said firm, "we need you to step away from the guest." Ethan angled his body so that the guard's path would take him into Ethan's shoulder line, not Nora's. It was the same logic he used years ago in crowded markets where threat could hide in normal faces. "I'll step aside," Ethan said, calm. "But she's coming with me." Grant scoffed. "She's not going anywhere. She's part of the program." Nora flinched at the word part. Ethan didn't look at Grant. He kept his eyes on the guard. "She said she isn't okay," Ethan replied. "That's not part of any program." The guard hesitated. His gaze flicked to Nora. He saw her face. He saw her hands shaking. Then Vanessa stepped in, bright and sharp. "She's overwhelmed," she said. "She's older, big crowd, it happens." Ethan's tone didn't change. She said no. One word, clean, hard to twist. The guard shifted again, uncomfortable now, caught between policy and humanity. Grant's smile dropped. The mask slid just enough for the room to see the teeth underneath. "Fine," Grant said, low. "If you want to play hero, play hero. But I'm calling the police. And if that dog so much as growls, I'll have it removed." Rex didn't growl. He didn't need to. Ethan didn't respond to the threat. He focused on the service corridor door because Owen Price had just looked that way again, and Owen's eyes were terrified. "Owen," Ethan said, voice quiet. Owen jumped at hearing his name. "Yes?" "Who else uses that door?" Ethan asked. Owen blinked. His mouth opened, closed. "Staff," he whispered. "Catering, maintenance, sometimes VIP." Grant snapped his head. "Don't answer him." Too late. Ethan caught the shift in Owen's throat when he swallowed. Fear. Guilt. The kind that came from knowing something and wishing you didn't. Rex's gaze locked on the door. A sound came from the corridor. Not loud, not obvious. A muted thud, like something heavy being set down. Then a second sound, softer. A woman's breath pulled in too sharply. Nora made a small noise behind Ethan, like a sob she bit down. The guards heard it too. One of them glanced toward the door. Grant didn't want them looking. He stepped closer to Ethan, trying to crowd him. "You're done," he hissed, quiet enough that only Ethan would hear. "You don't know who you're messing with." There it was, the private threat beneath the public smile. Ethan kept his voice low. "Then stop threatening a nurse and put your hands where everyone can see them." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to advertise capability. He just shifted his stance slightly. Weight balanced, left knee protected, shoulders squared. A former Navy SEAL didn't posture. He prepared. The tall man from the bar moved again, circling, trying to find a line past Rex. Rex tracked him without turning his head fully, a predator's calm awareness. The man slowed, then stopped, caught by the dog's silent warning. Vanessa's face tightened. She glanced toward the cameras, then to the door, then back to Grant. Something was slipping out of her control. Ethan made a decision. He turned to the guard closest to him. "There's someone in that corridor," he said. "Someone who doesn't sound okay. You can keep watching me, or you can do your job." The guard hesitated. His jaw flexed. Then Owen Price stepped forward, voice cracking. "I heard it too." Grant's head whipped around. "Owen!" Owen flinched, but he didn't retreat. "We should check," Owen said, breathy, "for safety." The guard looked at his partner. They shared a glance that said the same thing. "We can't ignore this." Ethan moved first, not toward Grant, but toward the corridor, keeping his shoulder between Nora and the crowd. He counted steps. 1, 2, 3. Rex flowed beside him, silent, close enough to touch. Ethan's hand hovered near Rex's neck, not gripping, just there. A reminder. A bond. Vanessa called after him, voice bright and panicked. "Sir, you can't go back there!" Ethan didn't look back. "Then you should have kept it safe." He reached the service corridor door and paused, listening, breathing, shuffling. A whisper. And a new scent hit him through the crack. Bleach. Fresh. Like someone had tried to erase something in a hurry. Ethan pushed the door open. The corridor was dimmer, the air colder. A mop bucket sat too neatly against the wall. A gray-suited shoulder flashed at the far end, turning a corner. And just beyond the mop bucket, a young woman knelt on the floor, hands tied with a plastic zip tie, eyes wide with terror. Ethan's body went still, the way it always did before action. Rex's ears lifted higher, silent as a warning bell. Behind Ethan, the ballroom noise faded, and he realized the first real confrontation had been waiting in this hallway the whole time. Bleach and broken smiles. Ethan's first move was not heroic. It was practical. He stepped into the corridor and blocked the doorway with his shoulder so the ballroom couldn't flood in behind him. He didn't want a crowd. Crowds turned danger into spectacle, and spectacle got people hurt. Rex slipped in beside him, black and tan coat, a quiet line of muscle. No sound, just the softest exhale as he scented the air. Bleach. Fresh and sharp, like someone had tried to clean gilt off tile. The young woman on the floor looked 24 maybe. Small frame, dark hair fallen loose from a clip, mascara smudged under wide eyes that screamed even when her mouth didn't. She wore a black dress that could have been staff attire or guest attire, torn slightly at the hem. Her wrists were cinched with a plastic zip tie. Ethan knelt, careful with his left knee, keeping his body between her and the open hall. "Hey," he said softly. "You're safe right now." She shook her head fast, tears already gathering. "No," she breathed. "No, I'm not. He's—" "Look at me," Ethan said. 2 words. Calm. Anchoring. "What's your name?" "Addison," she whispered. "Addison Reed." Rex lowered his head slightly and watched Addison's face, reading her fear. His ears stayed forward, tuned to the corridor behind them. Ethan scanned the hallway. Mop bucket too neat. A folded caution sign tucked away like it had been placed there after the fact. A small wet streak along the baseboard that didn't match the direction of normal mopping. Someone had cleaned one path quickly. "Addison," Ethan said. "Can you stand?" She tried and winced. "My ankle," she whispered. "I think I twisted it." Ethan didn't touch her yet. Consent mattered, even in chaos. "I'm going to cut that tie," he said. "Then we move, okay?" She nodded hard. One of the security guards appeared in the doorway behind Ethan, face tight. "Sir, what?" "Call for police," Ethan said without looking back. "Now. And don't let anyone else in here." The guard hesitated, then saw Addison's wrists and the zip tie. His expression changed from irritation to alarm. Owen Price crowded behind the guard, pale. "Oh my God," he whispered. Ethan glanced toward Owen just long enough to read him. Owen wasn't acting. He looked like a man watching his job burn and realizing it deserved to. "Do you have a box cutter?" Ethan asked. Owen fumbled in his pocket and produced a small utility knife with shaking fingers. "For opening crates," he stammered. Ethan took it, careful. He sliced through the plastic in one controlled motion, away from Addison's skin. The tie snapped, and Addison rubbed her wrists, sobbing once like she'd been holding it in. Rex turned his head toward the far corner again. Ethan followed his gaze. A faint scuff mark. Fresh. Shoe rubber dragged over tile, the kind of mark a man left when he pivoted too fast. The gray suit had gone left. Ethan stood, keeping the cutter low in his hand where it wouldn't alarm anyone. "Addison, can you put weight on your foot?" he asked. "A little," she whispered. "Lean on me," he said, then offered his arm. Addison took it like it was a rope over a cliff. They moved down the corridor in short, careful steps. Ethan placed each foot like he was crossing thin ice. He watched reflections in framed art on the wall, used them to see behind without turning his head. Behind them, the doorway remained, but the sound of the ballroom was changing. Murmurs, confusion, a shift in tone, like the party was realizing it had an infection. At the end of the hall, Ethan paused at a corner. Rex stopped too, body angled slightly, head low, eyes alert. Ethan listened. A door latch, a muffled voice. Then silence. He edged forward just enough to see. A storage room door stood half open, light spilling out. Inside, shelves of linens, cases of bottled water, and a rolling cart stacked with clipboards and folders. It looked ordinary, which meant it was perfect. Ethan didn't go in first. He sent Rex's eyes in first. Rex stared, unmoving, then flicked his ears once. No immediate threat. Ethan guided Addison to sit against the wall, tucked out of sight. "Stay here," he told her. "Breathe. You can scream if you need to, but save it for when someone touches you again." Addison nodded, eyes glued to him. "He works for them," she whispered. "Grant's people. He said I shouldn't have seen the numbers." Ethan's jaw tightened. Numbers. That word didn't belong in a hallway kidnapping unless money was the weapon. He stepped into the storage room. On the cart, clipboards lay open. Not guest lists, not menus. Invoices. Wire transfer confirmations. A thick binder labeled in neat print. Silverline Outreach. Event sponsorship. Silverline wasn't the name of the company on the stage. It was another name. A shadow name. Ethan flipped one sheet, careful not to leave fingerprints where they mattered. The numbers were too clean, too round. One donation split into 3 payments. 3 payments routed to different LLCs. The kind of pattern that hid a river by turning it into streams. "Sir?" the security guard called from the hall, voice strained. "The police are on their way, but Mr. Holloway is furious. He's saying you're trespassing." Ethan didn't answer. His focus narrowed. There was a second binder beside the first. NDAs. Stacks of them. Pre-signed by staff. He saw Owen Price's name on a line, the signature shaky, like a man signing away his voice. Ethan's eyes moved to the back of the cart. A small pouch, black, unmarked. Zip ties. A whole bag of them. Not for cables. For wrists. Rex let out a low huff, not a growl, but the closest thing he gave to a warning. Ethan turned. Footsteps, soft, controlled, coming from the hall. Ethan stepped out of the storage room and placed himself so he could see both directions. Addison sat tucked against the wall, hidden by the cart if someone didn't look closely. The gray-suited man appeared at the far end of the corridor. He looked around 40, lean, with a narrow face and hair combed back so tightly it shone under the fluorescent light. His gray suit was plain, the kind that made him forgettable in a crowd. But his eyes weren't forgettable. They were flat, professional. He saw Ethan. He saw Rex. He stopped like he'd hit a wire. "Wrong hallway," the man said calmly, as if Ethan was a guest who'd wandered. Ethan didn't rise to it. "Addison Reed," he said, voice even. 24, tied up back here. That's not a wrong hallway." The man's gaze flicked, just once, toward the storage room cart. That cart mattered. "You're making a scene," the man said. "People will get hurt." "That's usually the promise," Ethan replied. The man's mouth tightened. His hand slipped toward his jacket pocket, slow enough to look harmless. Ethan didn't wait for the reveal. He shifted one step to the left, angling his body to protect Addison's line and to keep Rex out of reach. His left knee protested, but he compensated with hip and core, distributing weight like training had burned into his bones. "Don't," Ethan said. The man froze for half a second, then smirked. "You think a dog and a limp make you dangerous?" Rex didn't move. That was the danger. The man took one quick step forward. Ethan's hand came up, open palm, and met the man's chest. Not a punch, a stop. The man tried to slip past. Ethan hooked his wrist with a controlled grip, turned the wrist just enough to redirect, then guided the man into the wall with measured force. No wild swing, no brutality, just control. The man hissed in pain, surprise breaking his professional calm. His pocket spilled a small object to the floor. A key card. Ethan's eyes caught the label printed on it. Executive Suite, Floor 19. The man lunged for it. Rex stepped forward one pace, silent, eyes fixed. The man stopped again, breath catching. He didn't want to find out how fast silence could turn. Ethan picked up the keycard with 2 fingers. Floor 19, he said, more to himself than the man. The gray-suited man's face finally changed. Not fear. Frustration. Grant doesn't forgive this, he muttered. Ethan leaned in close, voice low. Tell him to start practicing. In the distance, a siren wailed, faint but growing. Ethan looked down at Addison, then at the binders on the cart, then at the keycard in his hand. The gala wasn't just a place where people were cruel. It was a place where money disappeared, and people who noticed got tied up in hallways. And somewhere on the 19th floor, someone was still trying to keep a door closed. Chapter 4. What the Snow Tried to Hide. The sirens grew louder, then faded again. They weren't stopping. Not yet. Ethan noticed it immediately. Sirens that passed instead of arrived meant distance, delay. Someone had bought time, or someone had misdirected it. Calvin Brooks noticed too. His jaw tightened just for a fraction of a second. Enough. Ethan filed it away. Shadow remained still at Ethan's side, posture relaxed but alert, eyes tracking Calvin with quiet focus. The dog had stopped watching the room. He was watching intent now, not movement. Sit, Ethan said softly. Shadow lowered himself beside Ethan's left boot, muscles coiled beneath calm. Not disengaged, waiting. Calvin lifted his hands higher, palms open, a gesture meant to look cooperative. He was good at this. Late 40s, lean build, clean lines, eyes that understood leverage. His coat was tailored, expensive. Not the kind worn by men who planned to get their hands dirty. You handled that well, Calvin said. Professionally. Ethan didn't respond. Lena's phone rang quietly in her hand. She answered in a whisper, giving the address, her voice shaking but clear. She nodded once, as if receiving instructions, then slid the phone back beneath the counter. Sheriff Alvarez is on his way, she said, louder now. 5 minutes. Calvin smiled thinly. That's unfortunate. The words settled badly. Mark Reynolds sat hunched in his booth, breathing shallowly. Late 50s, soft hands that weren't used to fear. His eyes darted between Ethan and Calvin like a trapped animal looking for a way out that no longer existed. Ethan stepped closer to Mark, placing himself between the booth and Calvin. His navy coat brushed the edge of the table. Red and black flannel visible now, sleeves rolled just enough to free his wrists. You want to tell me why 5 men traveled across state lines for him? Ethan asked quietly. Calvin's smile widened. We didn't come for him, he said. Not really. That earned him Ethan's full attention. Shadow's ears twitched. Calvin continued, voice smooth. He's just leverage. Mark flinched. What does that mean? Calvin ignored him, eyes fixed on Ethan. This town sits on land no one wanted, until recently. Ethan glanced toward the windows, toward the dark outlines of mountains beyond the falling snow. Montana had always been like that. Quiet, overlooked, until it wasn't. Zoning changes, Calvin went on. Infrastructure projects, rail extensions, a pipeline maybe. Things people don't pay attention to until the paperwork is already signed. Ethan felt the shape of it forming. Mark's voice broke. "I didn't sign anything." Calvin chuckled softly. "Not yet." Shadow shifted, nails clicking faintly on tile. Ethan watched Calvin's hands. Calm, open, but his weight was wrong. Too centered, ready to move. "Your people didn't come prepared for a prolonged conversation," Ethan said. "You brought one knife." Calvin's eyes flicked, involuntary, to the door. Ethan saw it. "Which tells me the violence was supposed to be quick," Ethan continued. "Messy, but fast. Something you could blame on panic. A robbery gone wrong." Calvin didn't answer. "That means someone else is handling the real work," Ethan said. "Paperwork, permits, pressure." The silence stretched. Outside, snow thickened, swallowing sound. "You're assuming a lot," Calvin said at last. "I'm recognizing patterns," Ethan replied. Calvin's smile vanished. One of the men at the booth near the window shifted nervously. "Calvin, quiet," Calvin snapped. Shadow's head lifted instantly. His gaze snapped to the man, teeth visible again. The warning was immediate and absolute. The man froze. Ethan felt it then. The escalation. Not physical, strategic. This wasn't about Mark Reynolds alone. Mark was a key, not a target. Ethan stepped back half a pace, giving Calvin room without surrendering control. "You're running out of options," Ethan said. "Sheriff will be here soon." Calvin nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "but not soon enough." The words landed like ice. Ethan moved. Not forward, sideways. He shifted his stance, subtly blocking the angle between Calvin and the counter. Shadow rose with him, seamless, silent. Calvin's eyes widened a fraction. From behind the counter, something clattered to the floor. Metal. Lena gasped. Ethan turned just in time to see the man near the counter lunge, his hand coming up with something dark and compact. A second weapon. Shadow surged forward, fast and precise, placing himself between the threat and Ethan without waiting for a command. Ethan moved at the same time. The moment fractured. And outside, the sirens began to rise again. Closer now, cutting through the snow. 19 floors of truth. The sirens grew louder, then softened as the squad cars stopped outside the hotel. Their sound didn't bring comfort so much as a deadline. Ethan kept the keycard pinched between two fingers, as if it might burn. He didn't trust it. He didn't trust anything in a building that could smile while it tied a woman to the floor. Addison sat against the corridor wall, wrists red, breathing in sharp pulls that tried to become steady. Owen Price hovered nearby, pale and shaking, a man caught between fear and the first fragile urge to do the right thing. One security guard stood at the doorway, blocking curious staff, while the other spoke urgently into an earpiece. Rex stayed at Ethan's heel, silent, eyes scanning. His ears shifted toward the ballroom, then back toward the corridor, like he was triangulating threat by sound alone. Ethan made the decision fast and quiet. "Get her out," he told the guard. "Front desk, stay visible, don't take any elevators." The guard blinked. "Sir." "Stairs," Ethan said. "Public ones, cameras, witnesses. The guard's face tightened, then he nodded. Something in Ethan's calm made obeying feel like the safest option. Ethan crouched beside Addison. "Police are here," he said. "You're going to tell them everything you remember. Names, voices, anything." Addison's eyes found the keycard in Ethan's hand. "Don't go up there," she whispered. "They'll—" "I'm not going alone," Ethan said. It wasn't reassurance, it was a plan. He turned to Owen. "You're coming with me." Owen's mouth fell open. "Me?" "You know this building," Ethan said. "You know the doors, the cameras. You also signed something you shouldn't have." Ethan's gaze held him, steady. "This is where you start fixing it." Owen's throat bobbed. He looked like he might fold. Then his eyes darted to Addison's wrists. He nodded once, small and terrified. "Okay." Ethan rose. His left knee flared with pain, sharp and immediate. He adjusted his weight without letting it show. "Rex," he murmured. Rex didn't need more than his name. He shifted closer, pressing his shoulder lightly against Ethan's leg for a heartbeat, then returned to scanning the corridor. The guard returned from the corner. "Detectives here," he said. A man stepped into view 45, solid build, calm face, dark hair with a bit of gray at the temples. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. He wore a winter coat over plain clothes and moved like someone used to arriving after chaos had started. Detective Marcus Hill. He took one look at Addison and the binders on the cart and didn't waste time with questions. "Ethan Cole," Hill said, recognition flickering. Not surprise, more like confirmation. Ethan nodded. "Hallway kidnapping. Evidence of financial routing. Executive suite on 19. He held up the keycard. Hill's jaw set. "You didn't find that in Lost and Found?" "No," Ethan said. "It found me." Hill motioned to an officer behind him. "Get EMS for her. Lock down this floor. Secure the documents. Now." The officer moved. Hill looked at Owen. "Who's he?" "Facility manager," Ethan said. "He's scared, but he's here." Owen swallowed. "I can show you the camera room, and I can tell you who has master access." Hill's gaze sharpened. "Good, because whoever did this didn't act alone." Ethan's attention drifted back to the ballroom entrance. The music had stopped. The party noise had turned into a tense murmur. Somewhere behind those doors, Grant and Vanessa were still trying to turn reality into a performance. Hill followed Ethan's gaze. "They're already spinning it," he said. "Let them," Ethan replied. "Spinning makes people dizzy." Hill gave a tight smile, then nodded toward the elevator bank at the end of the corridor. Ethan shook his head immediately. "Not elevators." Hill lifted an eyebrow. "Elevators are traps," Ethan said. "Stairs give options." Hill studied him for a beat, then nodded. "Stairs." They moved fast but controlled. Ethan led with Rex, Hill half a step behind, Owen trailing, breathing too hard. Ethan chose the public stairwell, brightly lit, security camera above the door, a posted evacuation map. He checked the landing corners before taking them, listening for footsteps above. 18 steps per flight. Ethan counted without thinking. It kept his mind steady and his knee from becoming his whole world. At the 9th floor landing, Owen whispered, 19 is executive level. There's a private corridor after the stair door. Keycard access. Hill glanced at Ethan. "What's your angle here?" "Keep everyone alive," Ethan said, "and keep the evidence where it belongs." They reached floor 19 and stopped at the door. Rex's ears lifted. He scented, then went still. Ethan placed the keycard against the reader. A soft beep. Green light. The door clicked open. Ethan didn't rush. He cracked it just enough to see into the corridor beyond. Plush carpet, quiet lighting, no art, no warmth. It felt like money hiding. He gestured to Hill. "You take left, I take right. Owen stays behind the door, calls if he hears anything." Owen's face went white. You'll do fine," Ethan said, not unkind. "Just don't be brave. Be useful." Owen swallowed and nodded, gripping the railing like it was the only solid thing in the world. Ethan moved right, Rex beside him. Hill moved left, weapon drawn, but low. At the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar. Voices inside. 2, maybe 3. Grant Holloway's voice was unmistakable, even muffled smooth, angry, trying to sound in control. Vanessa's voice, sharp like broken glass. A third voice, lower, the gray-suited man. Ethan stopped just before the open door and listened. "You were supposed to keep her quiet," Grant hissed. "I did," the gray-suited man replied, "until your little show downstairs drew attention." Vanessa snapped, "This can't come back to us. The donors, the press." Grant cut her off. "We're not losing this. The money is already moved. The contracts are airtight." Hill's voice came from the left corridor, low and clear. "Not airtight enough." The room went silent. Ethan stepped into the doorway, Rex beside him like a shadow that had decided to become visible. Grant's face turned toward them, and for a fraction of a second, the man who ruled the ballroom looked like a kid caught stealing. He recovered fast, lifting his chin, trying to summon authority out of thin air. "What is this?" Grant demanded. "You can't be up here." Ethan's eyes stayed steady. "You can't tie a woman up downstairs." Vanessa's smile tried to form, failed. "This is a misunderstanding." Hill entered from the left, badge visible now, officers behind him filling the corridor like a closing net. "It's an arrest," Hill said. Grant's gaze darted, searching for an escape route. Ethan noted the angle of Grant's shoulders, the way his hand twitched toward the desk drawer. A panic move. A stupid move. Ethan shifted one step, placing his body between Grant and the drawer without touching him yet. "Don't," he said calmly. Grant sneered, but his eyes were afraid. "Who are you?" Ethan's voice stayed quiet, so quiet it made the words heavier. "A former Navy SEAL who doesn't like bullies." Grant lunged anyway, not at Ethan, but toward the door, trying to slip past the officers. Rex moved first, not with teeth, with presence. He stepped into Grant's path, silent, head level, eyes locked. Grant stumbled backward instinctively, hands flying up. In that half-second, Hill's officers moved. Hands on wrists, metal cuffs. Control without chaos. The gray-suited man tried to bolt the other way. Ethan pivoted, controlled, using the wall to cut off the angle. He didn't swing, he didn't tackle. He simply caught the man's forearm, turned it, and guided him down to his knees with measured force. 8 seconds. Precision. Hill read Grant his rights, while Vanessa stood frozen. Her perfect hair and perfect lipstick suddenly meaningless. She looked at Ethan like she wanted him to apologize for ruining her life. Ethan didn't. He looked past them, out the corridor window where Chicago's winter lights glittered below. Cold. Honest. Downstairs, the ballroom was loud again, but this time not with laughter. With the startled sound of people realizing their money had been used like a mask. Hill motioned to Owen, who appeared at the corridor door trembling. "You did good," Hill said. Owen blinked, like he hadn't heard praise in years. I should have spoken sooner." "Then speak now," Hill replied. "That's how it works." Hours later, the hotel lobby looked different. Not because the chandeliers had dimmed or the marble had cracked, because the story had changed hands. Nora Bennett sat on a bench near the front desk, a blanket around her shoulders, a cup of tea warming her palms. Lila Park stood beside her, face pale but steady, eyes shining with something like relief. Addison, wrapped in a coat an EMT had given her, sat nearby with a bandage on her ankle. She looked exhausted, but alive. She looked like someone who had been heard. Ethan approached slowly, Rex at his side. His navy coat was still stained, the red mark now dark and dried. He didn't mind it anymore. Nora looked up at him. Her eyes were wet. "I thought I was going to disappear," she said softly. Ethan's throat tightened. "Not tonight," he replied. Lila stepped forward, hands clasped. "Thank you," she said, voice shaking, "for seeing her, for seeing all of us." Ethan nodded once, uncomfortable with praise, but not allergic to gratitude. "You did the hard part," he told Lila. "You stayed human in a room that rewarded cruelty." Rex leaned his head gently against Nora's knee, just for a moment. Nora's hand trembled, then settled on his fur. She laughed through tears, a small sound that felt like spring. Outside, snow started falling again, slow and soft, like the city was trying to cover its own bruises. Detective Hill approached, folder in hand. "We're restructuring the fund," he said. "The board's stepping in, and we're recommending a new operations lead." Lila's eyes widened. "Me?" Hill nodded. "You kept your integrity when it cost you. That's rare." Lila covered her mouth, stunned, then let out a shaky laugh that sounded like she couldn't believe the world had finally been fair for once. Ethan watched it and felt something loosen in his chest. Not victory, something quieter. Repair. He looked down at Rex. "Let's go," he murmured. Rex rose, ears up, then glanced back at Nora one last time, as if memorizing her safety. As Ethan pushed through the revolving door into the Chicago cold, the wind hit his face again, sharp and clean. Behind him, the lobby held warmth tea, quiet voices, people learning the simple truth they'd forgotten upstairs. Respect didn't belong to the rich. It belonged to everyone. And sometimes, all it took to remind the world was one steady man and one silent dog. Some nights, evil feels loud. It clinks in crystal glasses, smiles for cameras, and dares anyone to speak up. But winter has a way of revealing what's real. A stained coat, a trembling hand, a hallway that feels too quiet. In moments like that, protection doesn't always arrive with flashing lights. Sometimes it arrives as a steady man who refuses to look away. Sometimes it arrives as a loyal German shepherd who says nothing, yet warns everything. And if you believe the Lord places help exactly where it's needed, then maybe this wasn't luck at all. Maybe it was mercy moving through a crowded room. Ethan didn't come to be praised. He came because his heart still recognizes injustice, and because Rex's loyalty is the kind that doesn't bargain or hesitate. Together, they remind us that courage can be calm, and kindness can be stronger than cruelty. Share if you believe in angels with paws. Comment Amen to bless our veterans. Subscribe for the next story.